with a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Kahr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry, Kahr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Kahr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit kahr.com today. Kahr Arms.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 10th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for Moon Hyung-jin, second king of Cheonryung Group. And I'm here with Greg Knoll, entrepreneur and small business owner. And we've been talking about the firing of FBI Director Comey yesterday by President Trump. But let's also look at some other news. There is some other news this morning. We'll go through the headlines that are non-Comey related now. Los Angeles declares public schools sanctuaries from ICE. Great again. Illegal border crossings down 70%. Maddow tops cable news. United can't seem to stay out of the news either. United canceled man's ticket for filming dispute. They need a new media directors.
They need a new PR person, I think.
Yeah. Chicagoland, 200th homicide of the year. Thousands flee for safer areas. Sounds like a good idea. Murder suspect, perhaps an area where guns are allowed, not just by police and bad guys, but also by good people. Murder suspect asks to show penis to jury in oral sex choking defense. Okay, we'll skip that one. Tupac docked by 12 years slave director. Wheelchair-bound 98-year-old woman terrorized as teens pour maple syrup on her head. CNN grand jury subpoenas issued in FBI's Russia investigation. New South Korean president says prepared to visit North Korea. Unafraid, Kim Jong-un plans sixth nuke test. This is an interview of the North Korean ambassador to the United Kingdom, and we'll be looking at that later on. I think it has some good things to know about. Political attempts White House visitor list. President Kamala Harris. 42% of Americans won't date someone with bad credit.
Won't date somebody.
Will not.
Well, that's quite common now for people to do a credit check on somebody you're dating.
I don't understand this. How do you do a credit check on someone? You're not supposed to be able to look at someone's credit report.
There's credit agencies that will give that information out. So when you're...
Is that legal?
I'm not sure if it's legal or not. But I know it's a common practice.
Or do you say, if a guy, says, hey, you want to go out tonight? And the girl says, well, I don't know. Let me see your credit report. I don't know how this works. It's been a long time since I was on a date. Apparently things have changed.
Aren't you on a date every day?
Yes, but I don't check her credit report.
You probably know her credit.
Yes, I do, actually. But I would date her even if she had bad credit, because it would probably be my fault if she did. Anyway, I don't understand this one. Small is probably beyond my pay grade. Smart salt shaker comes with Bluetooth color-changing mood light. Another one that I don't understand. Obamacare taxes may not go away. Yes, I think you can take the may out of that one, or not for the time being. I don't think Congress is going to have a replacement anytime soon. Abortion divides Democrats. Why liberals aren't as tolerant as they think. Wow, who'd have thunk? Prisoners turn to tablets to connect with outside world. Inmates advocate for sex doll companionship. Maybe that's a good use for those things.
They would stop doing it on each other.
That's what I mean, yeah, less homosexual rape in prison. Cells like dorms with hot pizza deliveries in prisons.
You know, if we give these prisoners all these perks and bennies, it's not going to be much of a deterrent.
In fact, maybe the opposite.
Exactly.
Huh? Yeah, put me in jail.
You know, I had my car stolen about 6 months ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I think the guy, you know, it was just too hard living on the outside.
Did he ever catch? They
caught him.
Right?
They caught him pretty much immediately.
Oh.
But, you know, in studying the guy's background, you know, he had been in and out, and I think it's just much easier you know, than being out. So I think he knew he was going to get caught, and it was just a quick and easy way to get back into the system where he can have all these
sex dolls and pizza.
That's right, an easy life.
Hungry Bear attempts brownie break-in. Kind of a reverse Little Red Riding Hood, I guess. Screams after scaling a porch, opening screen. Deer caught gnawing on human remains for first time. Ex-mortician sues over anguish from working with dead bodies. Okay. I didn't know I was going to have to deal with all these dead bodies.
He had no choice in the matter.
I thought it was going to be, I didn't know they'd be real. Tunnel collapses at Washington State nuke site. Yelp plummets as advertisers revolt. Vet nearly operated on himself when VA wouldn't pay medical bill. Wow. Mexico's second deadliest country tops Afghanistan and Iraq. More dangerous than Afghanistan or Iraq, Mexico.
That's because we're not allowing any more illegals into the United States. So.
Yeah. The Venezuelans prepare fecal cocktails to throw at security forces. There's an idea. Amazon to share new building with homeless shelter. Disney hurt by ESPN costs, shares dip. Tiny drones worn on soldier uniform, launched from hand. See, the king has been saying these robots and drones are going to be used for military purposes eventually, and he's right. Cheerleader jailed after lying about stolen uniform. Oregon on track to have no gender on driver's licenses. You just have to guess. And you have, many choices, I guess. Missing 17-foot python slithers home after 2 weeks on the lam. And Breitbart's non-Comey headlines. Shameless lad Everett uses Bob Owen's death to push gun control. Venezuela protesters deploy human fecal bombs. U.S. lawmakers visit Dalai Lama to demonstrate commitment to the Tibetan people. I wonder what they're thinking about in Beijing. These guys, I hope they realize that if they visit the Dalai Lama, they're not going to Beijing anytime soon. Waters, I believe Trump colluded with the Russians. I haven't seen any evidence to back it up, but I haven't backed that up, of course.
She has faith.
Yeah. Expansion of H-2B work visa program hits DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security, roadblock. NAACP and teachers' unions stir protest over Davos commencement address at Black University. NGO Cuba doubled political prisoners in 1 year. Caught on video, mountain bikers barely escaping being attacked by bear. Let's skip down to the one that you were mentioning during the break. Obama climate change speech earns him $3,260,000. We were getting excited about the $400,000 speech.
Right.
He's not just doubled down. This is not just quadrupled down. This is 8 times.
8 times. Yeah. And he stayed in a hotel room that costs, I think, $8,000 a night.
Well, let's go through this. Former President Barack Obama's speech on climate change in Italy raised 3 million euros That's $3.26 million in ticket sales for his personal foundation, according to a report from the Times. Do you have a personal foundation?
Well, he was learning from the Clintons.
Yes, isn't he? Wow. Oh, my goodness. That's why, she needs to be locked up, because other people are going to keep on doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Having traveled to Milan in a private jet, Obama settled into a presidential suite at the Park Hyatt Hotel costing roughly 8,400 euros a night. That's probably about $9,000, isn't it? Meanwhile, his entourage of security occupied 2 separate floors across the hotel, while his security detail required a convoy of 14 cars, a helicopter, and 300 extra police. The left has been complaining about President Trump's trips and how much that's costing. I guess we'll have to save this article to bring up every time they do that. The event, which attracted 3,500 people, paying 850 euros a ticket, that's about $1,000, I guess, raised nearly 3 million euros, all of which will go to the Obama Foundation, dedicated to renewal and global progress, of course,
Globalism.
Motherhood and apple pie. When it comes to climate change, the hour is almost upon us, Obama told the summit, urging the world to set aside our parochial differences to create a better planet for the world's children. See, I could have delivered that speech better than he could. If we seize the future, there is nothing that we cannot do. Seize the future? I do not believe that metaphor is left out. I do not believe that this planet is condemned to ever-rising temperatures, Obama said. I believe these are problems that were caused by man and can be solved by man. Wait a second. That should be, we're caused by man and can be solved by woman. Shouldn't it? Or that is sexist, actually.
Yeah, you can't say that anymore.
Cannot say man
Did he
anymore.
use the word man?
Yes, he did.
Oh
That's
my
in
gosh.
quotes.
That's a criminal, that should be a criminal speech.
Yes.
Hate speech.
Obama's visit to Italy forms part of a series of speeches in which he defends his record in office and attempts to undermine the policies of the Trump administration. In an acceptance speech after receiving the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award, Obama urged lawmakers to show political courage to save his landmark health care bill known as the Affordable Care Act, which is now unaffordable. In April, Obama agreed to a $400,000 speaking fee to give a speech at a prominent Wall Street center, Fitzgerald. Okay, let's go to the other one. The one about
the ex-presidents, aren't they? Isn't the protocol to lay low a little bit, at least the first year?
It is, yeah.
Obama's right out of the gate here.
Yeah. And I wanted to go to this other Obama story. Thing keeps jumping around, and I'm having. Well, here we go. The smaller stakes story. So, former President Barack Obama warned the world that more people on the planet were eating meat, causing a dramatic rise in climate emissions. So, we've always known that cows are the problem of, that cows...
the main source of...
Passing gas, I think, is the polite way of saying it. As people want to increase meat consumption, that in turn is spiking the growth of greenhouse emissions coming out of the agricultural sector, Obama said, pointing to countries that were consuming more meat. The former president shared his views about the growing threat during a conversation about food with his former chef, Sam Kass, at a food innovation summit in Milan.
So how's Obama doing on his steak consumption?
People aren't as familiar with the impact of cows and methane, Obama said, adding that as people want to increase more meat consumption, that in turn is spiking the growth of greenhouse emissions coming out of the agricultural sectors. See, you guys are the problem, you farmers. The amount of cows, Obama explained, were contributing to global pollution, alluding to the amount of methane gas emissions from cow herds. No matter what, we are going to see an increase in meat consumption, Obama said, pointing to developing countries in China, Indonesia, India, Indonesia, Vietnam. More advanced countries, Obama said, would have to teach people to have smaller steak and explore reductions to their meat consumption. What it does mean is that we're going to have to find ways to produce protein in a more efficient way, he said.
Like in a capsule.
Yeah, you're right, yeah. During the conversation, Obama argued with Kass about how many steaks he had cooked for him. Kass said that he probably cooked thousands of steaks for the president. Obama interrupted. I don't think thousands, he protested. Wait, no.
Can you say hundreds, please?
My carbon footprint wasn't that big. Please, please, please. Not thousands. Don't say thousands.
This is the personal chef.
Well, maybe hundreds, Cass backtracked. I've been cooking for you for 10 years.
You're fired.
You're fired. I don't work for you anymore. What is true is that I'm not a vegetarian, Obama admitted, adding that he respected vegetarians but continued to eat meat. Smaller steaks will save the world.
And he's setting a good example.
By putting $3.26 million into the Obama Foundation.
And, private jets and helicopters. And how much are the taxpayers paying for his travels? Do you know?
I don't know. Certainly, taxpayers are paying for his security.
Security, and it'd be good to get a breakdown of what taxpayers pay ex-presidents.
Yeah.
To look into that.
Yeah, I have to look into that. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back in a couple of minutes, a few minutes, with more news from a Cheongguk perspective.
Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. Just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God won't Little hands, shoeless feet, lonely eyes looking back at me. Will we leave behind the innocent to grieve? On their own, on the run, when their lives have only begun. These could be our daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for May 10th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder. I'm sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Moon Hyung-jin, and I'm here with Greg Knoll, a small business owner, farmer. No more cows, right? You used to have cows.
That's right. I heard President Obama's message, and
Obama's message.
we got rid of our
Got
cows.
rid of the cows. And all of us...
And we're having smaller portions.
We're having smaller portions. We all very deliciously enjoyed those cows that you raised. But it begs the question that you were actually bringing up. We see Obama getting 400,000 here, 400,000 there. Now and he goes to Europe, gets 3 million. But we're also paying presidents a pension. So I looked this up, and there's a law called the Former Presidents Act. And just what are we paying these people? So by law, former presidents are entitled to a pension, staff and office expenses, medical care or health insurance, and Secret Service protection. The pension is that right now it's $203,700 a year. The pension begins immediately after a president's departure.
$200,000 a year.
Yeah, the pension begins immediately after a president's departure from office. A former president's spouse may also be paid a lifetime annual pension of $20,000 if they relinquish any other statutory pension. So they get a staff and office and get medical insurance.
Staff.
And they get Secret Service protection. Former presidents were entitled from 1965 to 96 to lifetime Secret Service protection for themselves, spouses, and children under 16. And then in 1994, limited post-presidential protection to 10 years for presidents inaugurated after January 1, 1997. So Bill Clinton is still entitled to lifetime protection, and all subsequent presidents would have been entitled to 10 years protection. But then in 2013, Barack Obama signed the Former Presidents Protection Act, reinstating lifetime Secret Service protection for his predecessor, George Bush, himself, and all subsequent presidents.
How convenient.
Yeah. So, when he goes to Europe, we are paying for his protection, and I guess all those hotel rooms that were occupied by the Secret Service as well.
Yeah, and the helicopter and the private jet, more than likely, because you could justify a private jet for security.
Perhaps so. Yeah. So
I wonder how much it costs the taxpayer dollars just for that one trip to Italy.
Yeah, okay. So we're saying to the guy, okay, we'll give you $203,000, and he says, well, I think I prefer to give speeches for $400,000. Does he need the $200,000? Does he need the $200,000?
Yeah,
Come
what
on.
happened to the idea of public service?
Yeah.
To the
Maybe
office.
If we're in an age now where former presidents can earn millions of dollars a year, I can see the Secret Service protection, but maybe this pension of $200,000, maybe that can be conditional on or at least deduct whatever he earns otherwise.
Well, the problem is the Clinton Foundation and now the Obama Foundation. These are highly political foundations, oftentimes with self-interest, very hyper-liberal agenda, and so therefore we're stuck with taxpayers paying the bill for something that's highly political. I just think that whole system needs to be looked at, and that's part of draining the swamp, in my opinion.
Okay, well, enough about that. Let's go to our favorite topic, Korea, North Korea. A few days ago, Bill Gertz actually tweeted that calling North Korea the dog that didn't bark. And I responded that, this could still happen. Actually, I think the election of Moon Jae-in yesterday, the leftist candidate in Korea yesterday, increases the chances that North Korea now is going to feel freer to act because Moon Jae-in, by the way, was immediately inaugurated, so he's now the president of South Korea. With this new president, who is not as close to the United States, certainly, not as cooperative with the United States, certainly, as either Park Geun-hye or the president, what do you call him, acting president Hwang Kyo-an was. Now North Korea may feel that this is the time for them to act. And here we have an interview with the North Korean ambassador to London by Sky News. And I think some of the things he says are instructive. Although he does not deviate from the normal North Korean line, I think it's instructive to see what that line is. North Korea's ambassador to the UK has told Sky News his country will go ahead with its sixth nuclear test at the time and place of its leader's choosing. And that's right. North Korea has a pattern of attacking or acting when it's least expected, and in ways that are not expected, and in places that are not expected. And they like to put themselves in charge in terms of where they're going to strike and when they're going to strike. So I'm sure this is true. In his first interview in the role, Ambassador Choi Il said his country would continue its ballistic missile and nuclear programs in spite of international warnings against them, and dismissed UN sanctions as having no legal grounds and no effect. In regards to the sixth nuclear test, I do not know the scheduled time for it, as I am here in the UK, not in my home country, Mr. Che said. However, I can say that the nuclear test will be conducted at a place and time as decided by our supreme leader, Kim Jong-un. Sky News asked the ambassador whether he was concerned about the prospect of U.S. military action, which President Donald Trump's administration has said is one of the options now being considered. And he says, if we were afraid of it, we probably would not have started conducting nuclear tests or launching ballistic missiles. He added, we are developing our nuclear strength to respond to that kind of attack by the U.S. If the U.S. attacks us, our military and people are fully ready to respond to any kind of attack. He said a preemptive strike on his country would not be possible because they would turn U.S. assets in the region to ashes at the first sign of movement toward an attack. The U.S. cannot attack us first, the ambassador said, adding, if the U.S. moves an inch, then we will be ready to turn to ashes any available strategic assets of the U.S. He's referring, I guess, to U.S. bases in Korea and perhaps in Japan as well. And also, people keep talking about the 230,000 U.S. citizens that are living in South Korea. Mr. Trump has sent what he calls a powerful armada led by USS Carl Vinson to the waters off the Korean Peninsula, where it has been carrying out exercises with the South Korea's Navy. However, the White House approach is at odds with the ambitions of the new liberal South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who has spoken of his desire to bring integration, unity, and harmony to the country. Believing that confrontation has done nothing to stop North Korea from expanding its nuclear arsenal, his desire for warmer ties with Pyongyang has caused some concern.
And that will work, I'm sure. The warmer ties will work.
There was something called the Sunshine Policy previously, and that is actually what accelerated North Korea's development of nuclear arms.
You can't really go to bed with the devil and come
cannot,
out unscathed.
And it's true that policies until now have not really worked. Confrontation hasn't worked. The Sunshine Integration, Unity, and Harmony has not worked. Excuse me. A former top diplomat for East Asia described the election of Mr. Moon as presenting a risk of tension and divergence of opinion between the U.S. and South Korea. Yep, that's true. The United States is currently thought to be readying new sanctions in the event of another nuclear test. But in this interview, the ambassador said his country had been living under sanctions for the last 6 decades, and more sanctions would make no difference to their nuclear ambitions.
There's probably some truth to that.
There
right?
is absolutely some truth to that. More than some truth. It's very truth. He denied his government's pursuit of nuclear weapons was making the lives of his people harder. And he says, our nuclear power is our sovereign right. This is the important thing, he says here. It is the only way to protect the peace of the Korean Peninsula and the region. So this is actually, though, interesting because North Korea looks at Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya, especially Libya that gave up its nuclear program and was subsequently attacked by the U.S. And they says, look, countries that don't have nuclear programs get attacked by the U.S. So in order to preserve our sovereignty, we must have a nuclear program. We must have nuclear weapons. That is the only way to preserve our sovereignty. And this is what all the North Korean media and officials are saying these days. And they've been saying that for years. But the interesting thing is that actually it's the opposite. That their sovereignty is going to be threatened because of their nuclear program. Because eventually, someone's going to have to do something about it. Either the United States or China. I think it's better if China does it. But eventually, the big powers in the world, Russia and Japan also, the 4 powers that surround the Korean Peninsula, are going to say, listen, this is not going to work. We cannot have North Korea that is deploying nuclear missiles. So far, they have not actually deployed nuclear weapons. China doesn't want that. Russia doesn't want that. Japan surely does not want that. The United States does not want that. South Korea is not so sure. Oh, surely they will not attack us. Those are not meant for us. So eventually, it's actually the nuclear program that is going to undermine North Korea's sovereignty. And they need to be made to realize this. And the trick is, how do you make them realize that? And it doesn't look like they're going to see that. So then, who then is going to go in and attack North Korea and remove the threat, remove the nuclear program? United States, or China, Japan, Russia? One of those 4 will have to do it. I think China is the best candidate to do it. China needs to, and when will they do it? They will only do it when it's in their interest to do it. I think if they believe that America is going to do it, they will want to act first. They will not want the United States to go in, because China wants now to pretend that it is a leader in the world, a superpower in the world.
Especially in the Far East.
Yeah, especially in the Far East. And so if you're a leader in the world, you got to be able to take care of this problem that's right on your doorstep, that's right next to you. If you can't take care of North Korea, how are you going to involve yourself in the Middle East or Africa, as they want to do, and as they're already involved in Africa to a great extent, or in other areas of the world? How are you going to call yourself a world leader if you can't even take care of that?
Do they really look at North Korea as a problem? No, that's my question. It seems like they're serving a certain purpose for China.
Well, that was why the previous, Jiang Zemin, 2 presidents previous of China, helped North Korea develop its nuclear program. But the current president, though, Xi Jinping, is facing a different situation, because he's finding that North Korea is not as controllable as he would like it to be. It's okay for North Korea to have a nuclear weapon if they can be assured that North Korea is going to do what China says.
Yeah.
But the removal of Chang Song-taek, the sort of the man of reason that they could, that North Korea, that China could talk with. This was Kim Jong-un's uncle. This was the guy that he was sort of providing adult supervision to Kim Jong-un's administration. But then Kim Jong-un killed him, executed him. And then also, China had contacts in the North Korean military. But Kim Jong-un has been executing those people. So China is losing, I think China's feel like it's losing control over North Korea. And you don't want North Korea to have nuclear weapons if they're not going to be controllable, if they're not going to do as they're told by China. So I think also China is increasingly feeling that it cannot control North Korea, and it also is feeling that the United States may actually attack North Korea, because they see President Trump as being unpredictable, and so they don't want America to attack North Korea, because that would create problems. Because if the North Korean regime collapses under a U.S. attack, then what happens? Then they lose their buffer zone. Their buffer zone that is now that they have against U.S. bases in South Korea and Japan. So I think China is more and more going towards the position where it will finally decide to take action in North Korea. Eventually, that has to happen. North Korea's program right now may be frozen for the time being. I don't know. Each day, we could wake up someday and find that they've tested that they've done that test. But for the time being, at least for now, for this next hour or so, it's frozen. But we have to see what China will do in the meantime. Because freezing that program only means delaying the inevitable. Just kicking the can down the road a little bit more. That's all. But eventually, it has to be taken out. And if China doesn't do it, the United States will have to. And that will be a tremendous tragedy. China doing it is not such a good thing either. But if you have to choose among many, many bad options, getting China to go in and take out that program is the least bad of all the bad options, I think.
Well, it would seem like with all the failed missile testing recently in North Korea, maybe North Korea is a little bit concerned about a failed nuclear test.
Maybe so.
That's one way to deal with the problem.
That's one way to deal with the problem too. Yes, yes. Maybe the viruses have been infected. They've been infected by viruses. All right, let's take a break and come back in a minute or so.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
I know my God won't let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings, girls will be queens, wrapped in your majesty. When we love the least of these, then they will be brave and free. Shout your name. daughters and our sons. And just like a drum, I can hear their hearts beating. I know my God.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for May 10th of 2017. And I'm here. My name is Tim Elder. I'm sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Moon Hyung-jin, and I'm here with entrepreneur, small business owner, and farmer Greg Noll. And we're going through the news with a Cheongguk perspective. And I want to carry on a little bit with the Korean Peninsula. With this article on the new president who was elected and sworn in yesterday. He was sworn in immediately after the election was confirmed. This is out of Seoul, by Reuters article. South Korea's new liberal president Moon Jae-in was sworn in on Wednesday and vowed to immediately tackle the difficult tasks of addressing North Korea's advancing nuclear ambitions and soothing tensions with the United States and China. Moon said in his first speech as president he would immediately begin efforts to diffuse security tensions on the Korean Peninsula and negotiate with Washington and Beijing to ease the row over a U.S. missile defense system being deployed in the South. See, this is he was the chief of staff of former President Roh Moo-hyun, who was president from 2003 to 2008, and this is what they tried to do too, to try to be a kind of a broker between Washington and Beijing. It failed then, but this guy's going to try to do the same thing again. In his first key appointments, Moon named two liberal veterans with ties to the Sunshine Policy of engagement with North Korea from the 2000s to the posts of prime minister and spy chief. Sunshine Policy failed. It only accelerated North Korea's program of developing nuclear weapons. Moon named Seo Hoon, a career spy agency official and a veteran of inter-Korea ties, as the head of the National Intelligence Service, NIS, formerly the KCIA. Seo was instrumental in setting up two previous summits between the North and South. Veteran liberal politician Lee Nak-yeon was nominated to serve as prime minister. Now a regional governor, Lee was a political ally of the two former presidents who held summits with the North in 2000 and 2007. Lee's appointment requires parliamentary approval. Moon was expected to fill the remaining cabinet and presidential staff appointments swiftly to bring to an end a power vacuum left by the removal of Park Geun-hye in March in a corruption scandal that rocked South Korea's business and political elite. I will urgently try to solve the security crisis, Moon said in the domed rotunda hall of the Parliament building. If needed, I will fly straight to Washington. I will go to Beijing and Tokyo, and if the conditions are right, to Pyongyang also. Actually, during the election, he said that he will visit North Korea before he visits Washington. Spy chief nominee Seo said Moon could go to Pyongyang if it was clear the visit would help resolve the North Korean nuclear crisis and ease military tension on the Korean Peninsula. The deployment of the Terminal High-Altitude Area Defense System in South Korea angered China, Seoul's major trading partner, which sees the U.S. system's powerful radar as a threat to its security.
In fact, they did sanctions, right? China did sanctions on South Korea.
Yes, they've been discouraging people from visiting, and the system was deployed on land owned by the Lotte Group, which is a department store chain of department stores, basically, many other things as well. But and they had a lot of branches in China, and China closed most of them down. I don't know if they closed them all down, but most of their branches in China have been closed down as sanctions against that particular company. The issue has clouded efforts to rein in North Korea's nuclear and missile programs and also led to recriminations by Beijing against South Korean companies. Moon 64 also pledged to sever what he described as the collusive ties between business and government. They all say that. I take this office empty-handed, and I will leave the office empty-handed, Moon said. Moon met leaders of opposition parties before his simple swearing-in ceremony at Parliament and promised to coordinate better with them on national security issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Xi Jinping and Shinzo Abe congratulated him, and Xi said China was willing to handle disputes with South Korea appropriately on the basis of mutual trust and understanding. China, I'm sure, is very happy with this election result because, as the article says, they were unhappy with the deployment of the THAAD missile defense system in South Korea. And Moon is the one who's been saying that he will reconsider that. He will look at it again. Right now, the deployment, I think, has they say that the deployment has completed. They wanted to get it all deployed before the election, and they succeeded in doing that. But they think they still had to test it. But it's basically been deployed, so that South Korea is protected somewhat from the missile attack from North Korea. But South Korea, this is not protected, though, from artillery attacks from the north. And that is the unfortunate thing, because North Korea still has thousands of artillery pieces lined up along the demilitarized zone, which can rain down on Seoul and other areas in the event that North Korea decides to attack, whether as a preemptive attack or as a retaliatory attack. So people living in Seoul are still in danger, but they seem to assume that that's not something to worry about. About a quarter of the South Korean population is living in and around Seoul, more than 10 million people living there, well over 10 million people living in that area. And in the event of a North Korean attack, the casualties could be in the hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions. And North Korea is using that as a threat. You saw in the interview with the North Korean ambassador to London that we covered in the previous segment, where he says that if they see U.S. Moving towards a preemptive attack, they will attack first, and so they will turn to ashes, he says, U.S. assets in Korea and Japan.
Is there any indication that they would attack innocent civilians, or is more the rhetoric that they'll attack these U.S. assets that are being called?
So North Korea does not want to say that they will attack civilians, but in reality, we have to assume that that is the case, and that because those artillery pieces will hit a lot more than just U.S. assets, just the U.S. bases, or even whether it's in South Korea or in Japan. And previous North Korean attacks have killed civilians. When they attacked they shot some artillery at one of the offshore islands a few years ago, and some civilians were killed then. So they are not above killing civilians.
Well, it seems like North Korea likes the sunshine policy because they continue to develop in the midst of having so-called peaceful talks.
Very much so. Yeah, and sunshine policy brings them
buys
food,
them time and food.
Brings, I think, what was it? The chief of Hyundai, actually, he trucked cows into North Korea.
How are those cows doing now?
I'm sure they're gone. I'm sure they're gone.
Well, that will help the global warming situation.
Yeah. And of course, fertilizer was trucked into North Korea. Money was trucked into rice was trucked in was sent to North Korea by ship.
So using the goodwill of South Koreans to support a communist regime that really has no intention of evolving or changing into a peaceful society.
Yes. Yeah.
Isn't that part of the Communist Manifesto where the ends justifies the means, and you can pretty much deceive your way into more and more political power?
Yeah, and North Korea will definitely take advantage of that kind of thing to develop their military capabilities and to strengthen the hold on their populations. There's not been any change, despite the Sunshine Policy was a failure, and South Koreans have recognized that.
But they still elected somebody that would continue the same failed policies.
Yes, and I think for one thing, many South Koreans, especially in the younger generation, don't understand the threat that they face from North Korea, as implausible as that might seem. But they don't understand that.
I was surprised to hear that Seoul is 40 miles away from the DMZ.
Yeah. And so long-range artillery can hit Seoul.
Yeah, that's like the distance between the palace and sanctuary church.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And this was an issue as far back as the Seoul Olympics in 1988, where there was a concern that Korea might strike the Olympic Stadium or other Olympic facilities during the games. And that's why it was so important then to get the Soviet Union and China into the Olympics in Seoul and make sure that they attended, so that they would
The human shields.
that they would hold North Korea back during that time. So it was a concern even back then. And that threat has existed. And when a threat like that exists for a long, long time, people become sort of immune to it. They think, it's something that we don't need to worry about.
It was explained to me recently by a business person from South Korea. Said it's like living in San Francisco under the threat of an earthquake at any moment, and people continue to live their lives, and it's not a big concern.
I've thought of it that way too.
Yeah.
You never know when the big one's going to hit California, and you never know when the North Koreans are going to attack South Korea. And of course, previously South Korea was under the protection of the Lord of the Second Advent.
Right.
But that protection has now been removed, and especially because of the betrayal of the Han Mother, that protection has been removed. And so we're very concerned about what is going to happen in South Korea over the next weeks and months. This new president now, I think he's now in for a 5-year term beginning now, and things will happen, I'm sure, during that 5-year
The
term.
consequences were quite severe for Jerusalem after the crucifixion of Jesus.
Yes, it took 40 years for those consequences to appear in reality, but they did appear.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the providence has been sped up now, so it will not likely that it will take 40 years. It will probably be much, much shorter than that.
Could be 4 years.
It could be 4 years, could be 4 weeks. We don't know. But that will be up to God. God will decide the time and the manner of the judgment. But certainly the judgment against South Korea is coming, and the election of this president certainly makes that judgment much more likely. And so we are very concerned. But as we read in the Bible Rima this morning, fight the good fight, keep the faith, and God will prepare a reward for those who have been righteous. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back in a minute with more news from a Cheongguk perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name. At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name. At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name. At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 10th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Chanuguk, Moon Hyung-jin. And I'm here with Greg Knoll, entrepreneur, small business owner, and farmer. I wanted to go to a story about how Jared Kushner affected U.S. policy on the NAFTA thing. And, the article in Breitbart here is how Jared Kushner's call to Canada saved NAFTA. We've been talking about how, Ivanka and Kushner have been, it seems kind of, twisting and distorting President Trump's policies, and it seems to be an example of that. President Donald Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner, played a key role in the Trump administration's decision to back down from its threat to withdraw from the North American Free Trade Agreement. I guess we kind of guessed this, but we have that confirmation here. Exactly what that role involved, however, is a matter of dispute. Kushner was a conduit between Canadian officials and the Trump administration, but accounts differ about the details. Last month, various news reports said that Trump was preparing to invoke Article 2205 of NAFTA, the first step in withdrawing from the trade agreement that the U.S. president had attacked so fiercely on the campaign trail. Several hours later, however, the administration appeared to reverse course, saying Trump had been persuaded by the leaders of Mexico and Canada to stay in the deal. And I remember that day. In the morning, reporters covering the White House were saying, "Okay, he's going to withdraw this afternoon, or he's going to sign something this afternoon saying that the U.S. is withdrawing." But then after lunch, the exact opposite happened. And so I was left wondering, what did he have for lunch? Who did he meet for lunch? Turns out that Kushner was involved there. And here a quotation from Trump. "Two people that I like very much, the President of Mexico, Prime Minister of Canada, they called up and said, 'Can we negotiate?' I said, 'Yes, we can renegotiate,' Trump explained at a rally in Pennsylvania a few days later. The event, so how did they just happen to call the president at that moment? The events of April 26th set off a torrent of speculation about what really happened inside the White House. Some said that the administration had been bluffing all along, using the talk about the withdrawal to get Canada and Mexico to take seriously its plans to renegotiate the trade agreement. Others said the turnaround reflected a struggle within the White House between the economic nationalists like Chief Strategist Steve Bannon, haven't heard his name for a long time, have we? And National Trade Council Chief Peter Navarro, and globalist hardliners such as National Economic Council head Gary Cohn. Bannon and Navarro had reportedly drafted an executive order that would have initiated the withdrawal process. The globalists in the business community had sprung into action following reports on the imminent order from the New York Times, CNN, and others. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross has put forward a third theory, according to which the events of April 26th were neither a power struggle nor a art of the deal negotiating tactic. Instead, Ross said that this was simply a leak on an ongoing policy discussion that got taken too far by the American media. What people don't understand is the president encourages lively discussion. In the course of those discussions, all kinds of alternatives come up, Ross told CNBC. I think that's unfortunate. I think what's unfortunate is that someone leaked one of the many potential papers that was floating around and created a whole skirmish over something that had not been decided upon by the president. New reports have emerged that put Kushner at the center of the globalist effort to save NAFTA. According to the news service, the Canadian Press, Kushner called the chief of staff of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to suggest that the Prime Minister immediately call Trump. The staffer, Katie Telford, called the Prime Minister, who then called Trump, according to the Canadian Press. White House officials tell a slightly different story. They say that Kushner was contacted by Trudeau or his aides earlier in the day, and that Kushner agreed to set up a time for a phone call later in the day. The two stories differ about who reached out to whom first. They agree, however, that Kushner's call to the Canadians is what prompted the call between Trump and Trudeau, and the U.S. president says convinced him to back away from exiting NAFTA. No content here about how the Mexican president got involved, but anyway, so this is confirms something that we see. Okay, so Wilbur Ross says that there are all kinds of discussions going on, and that the president encourages this, and that you cannot just take one paper that happens to be floating around. But it's clear, though, that there was this tug-of-war between the people like Bannon and Navarro on the one hand, and Cohn and others on the other hand, and Kushner jumped in to set up an appointment with Trudeau, or a phone call with Trudeau, and I'm not sure how the Mexican president got involved in it, but anyway, the Mexican president called Trump and said, we'll agree to renegotiate. So the NAFTA, as a result, is still in force, even though President Trump criticized it very fiercely on the campaign trail. And President Trump needs to remember what he promised to those 62 million people that voted for him, and what is expected of him. Because elections are coming up next year, midterm elections, and of course the Senate looks like a good opportunity for the Republicans to gain seats in the Senate, because out of 34 seats that are up for election next year, only 8 are Republican, and the rest are either Democrat or independents who vote with the Democrats. But Trump needs to be checking off more of his campaign promises. Otherwise, those midterm elections could turn out very poorly, and he'll be having even more difficulty than he is now if he loses the majority in the Senate, especially.
I think he does understand the art of negotiating, and I think part of negotiating is you play a really hard. You play a hard hand, and he did that on the campaign trail. So it put the fear of God into the Mexican government and the Canadian government. So they do make this call in the final hour, saying that, hey, let's negotiate. And that's really what President Trump wants out of this. He wants to negotiate a better deal, whether that means scrapping NAFTA altogether or just renegotiating so it's more favorable to American workers. The end result is the same. It creates a better business environment for American workers. So I'm not looking at this as a negative breaking of a campaign promise, but more moving it in the right direction. I think Trump has to be careful not to do too much too fast, because that also creates an incredible amount of insecurity and lack of focus to moving other agendas forward. I think NAFTA, as long as it's being renegotiated into a more favorable deal, then I think campaign promise is fulfilled.
Well, the issue is U.S. sovereignty. That the problem with NAFTA was that it deteriorated U.S. sovereignty, and it sacrificed the interests of U.S. workers to the interests of globalist economic interests. And so that is what is at the core of the problem. That is what, if there's going to be a renegotiation, that is what needs to be resolved. And we'll have to see what kind of proposals are put forward. Of course, renegotiation is going to take time, and it won't be done by, I don't think it'll be done by next year's election. These treaties take a very long time. First of all, the governments have to get authorization from their Congresses to renegotiate, that kind of thing.
But these are our close neighbors, so I think it's prudent to be a little bit more on the safe side rather than scrapping an entire agreement that would cause a major rift with our immediate neighbors. And I think with everything that Trump has going on, and let's face it, the jobs are up. There's a lot of consumer confidence now, the highest ever in the last 15, 20 years. So I think there's enough positive news out there that I think can carry the president forward.
For now, yes. I just wonder if there is an economic collapse, and I think that still is a possibility. If there is an economic collapse, then things like this are going to come back on him.
That's true. That's true.
All right, let's take another break now, and we'll be back a little bit later with more news for this morning.
Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 10th, 2017. I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Moon Hyung-jin. I'm here with Greg Knoll. And let's look at some interesting stories this morning. Duke professor facing disciplinary action for criticizing diversity training. A professor at Duke University is facing 2 disciplinary proceedings after condemning diversity training initiative taking place on campus. Professor Paul Griffiths of Duke University's Divinity School is facing charges of harassment and unprofessional conduct after arguing that socially engineered diversity efforts have illiberal roots and totalitarian tendencies. In an email on the faculty listserv, Griffiths complained that mandatory re-education programs have a long and ignoble history. What if it gets beyond that? Its illiberal roots and totalitarian tendencies will show. Events of this sort are definitively anti-intellectual, he wrote. Retrainings of intellectuals by bureaucrats and apparatchiks have a long and ignoble history. I hope you will keep that history in mind as you think about this instance. So I guess another example of the illiberal liberals, where they're trying to re-educate people there. Send them to re-education camps, re-education workshops. In response to Griffith's email, Dean Elaine Heath chastised him for disagreeing. Chastised him for disagreeing. How dare he? How dare he? In university, you're supposed to agree with everything.
That's right.
Claiming
there is no
that-
debate in universities.
Absolutely not. Claiming that it was that it was inappropriate and unprofessional for Griffiths to humiliate or undermine his colleague. The use of mass email, she continued, to express racism, sexism, and other forms of bigotry is offensive and unacceptable, especially in a Christian institution. Oh, that's right. Duke is Christian. Forgot about it. I think
Well,
maybe.
he's in the School of Theology, or what's his,
Divinity.
Divinity
Yes,
School.
Divinity School.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. How dare him take a stance?
Professor
anything.
Thomas Fowle of Duke's Divinity School fired back in Griffiths' defense, arguing that there was absolutely no discernible evidence of bigotry in Griffiths' email. Well, disagreeing is bigotry,
That's right.
isn't it? I mean, that automatically is bigotry if you disagree with the left. You know?
That's right.
Having reviewed Paul Griffiths' notes several times, I find nothing in it that could even remotely be said to express racism, sexism, and other forms of bigotry to suggest anything of the sort. Strikes me as either gravely imperceptive or as intellectually dishonest. Oh, that's bigotry. Griffiths, who will now face charges of harassment and unprofessional conduct, has claimed that academics like Dean Elaine Heath would prefer to discipline those who contradict her rather than engage with them. These disciplinary proceedings are designed not to engage and rebut the views I hold and have expressed about the matters mentioned, but rather to discipline me for having expressed them. Elaine Heath and Thea Poirier-Young, when faced with disagreement, prefer discipline to argument. In doing so, they act illiberally and anti-intellectually. Their actions show totalitarian affinities in its preferred method,
This guy's
which
really speaking out.
is the veiled use of institutional power.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This guy should be celebrated.
You can read the entirety of Professor Griffith's solicitors email below.
So I guess he won't be having a job long. Is he a tenured professor? Because he's more than likely going to lose his job.
Oh, we'll have to see. Yeah. Paul Griffiths of Duke University's Divinity School. Yeah, this is, as he says, this is a good point here, that actions show totalitarian affinities in his preferred method, which is the veiled use of institutional power. And that is something that the left has been doing a great deal recently. They accuse Donald Trump of being totalitarian, or even, was it Chris Matthews said that there was a whiff of fascism or something like that. But actually it is the left that likes to use institutional power. In other words, centralized power, and then take over that power and then use it against their opponents. And so when you have someone who's trying to decentralize that power, they feel extremely threatened. And that's what's happening right now. They feel extremely threatened because they see their centralized power structures being deconstructed and being dissolved, and they don't like that at all.
And they also like to create public opinion, through using media outlets, and they're losing control of that too with the internet.
Yeah.
Now people can have the free exchange of ideas and debate, a rigorous debate online, whereas before that was never the case.
And even the media is more and more centralized. And the left, of course, likes to take that over and use that as their instrument to enforce their views. And anything that disagrees with them is immediately fascist, Nazi, and totalitarian.
Hate speech.
Hate speech.
They actually have laws in the United States government right now that you can be arrested for hate speech, which is oftentimes just a free exchange of ideas.
Yeah. And many Christians, unfortunately, feel threatened by that.
Absolutely.
And so they soften their stance on homosexuality, for example. They soften their stance on that, or else put it under a rug. But that doesn't happen here, does it?
Not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. So, here we are out in the woods of Pennsylvania, speaking as we wish, exercising our right to free speech. Another leftist incident here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, not far from where I went to college. Activists within the student government at the University of Wisconsin-Madison recently passed legislation which calls for community control of the police. Now, community control of police is, in itself is not bad.
Doesn't sound bad,
doesn't sound bad. Yeah. Peace police, give guns to everybody. Let's see if that's what they're going to do. In an effort to counter supposed implicit bias within the university police system, they have a police system. Activists within the student government at the University of Wisconsin-Madison have demanded community control of campus police activity. The student activists claim there are many incidents where students of color and historically marginalized communities are treated differently by police officers. They cite the Black Lives Matter platform as the blueprint for their draft of the legislation. The Black Lives Matter platform calls on community control of the police because current policing practices demonstrate a lack of voices for communities of color. Black Lives Matter has been called by some as to be a terrorist organization. The resolution entitled UWPD Accountability and Community Control of the Police passed by a unanimous vote in the Student Council and will now be passed on to the Faculty Senate for confirmation. The resolution argues that the treatment and characterization of people of color by UWPD raises questions about their implicit bias and discriminatory policy procedures. In response to the allegations of discrimination, the resolution demands that UWM implement a community accountability board to review the policies and procedures that discriminate against people of color. This reminds me very much of what we went through in the college campuses in the 70s, where people were having sit-ins, late 60s and 70s, because of the Vietnam War. You'd occupy a building and maybe trash it, and you'd occupy the president's office and do this and that. There seems to be a repeat of that kind of thing, where students are taking control of the the university. It kind of calls into question the whole purpose of the of university, doesn't it?
Well, it's the same professors that are now professors that were part of those
Yeah,
sit-ins
that's right.
in the 60s that are now encouraging, radical students on college campuses
Yeah.
to take the same kind of action that they did when they
Yeah.
were in their early 20s. So,
It's all our fault. Yeah, it didn't do much constructive good back then, and this kind of thing as well. Breaking down this is basically leading to the breaking down of the university system, and maybe that's not such a bad thing in the long run. Against the centralization of education and the indoctrination of students at these university campuses is something that needs to be broken down anyway. So I think this might be kind of a judgment on the university system.
I think so. I think more and more, even people who are liberal are no longer associating themselves with this new class of liberals that say they're liberals, but in fact they're quite narrow in their thinking. They don't allow the free exchange. They don't allow debates. They don't allow people from varying opinions to communicate. They want to have a monolithic viewpoint expressed, and if you don't agree with that monolithic viewpoint, then you are considered a fascist. And that's the kind of political correctness that has really gone to an extreme where now people of conscience cannot even speak their mind. They're afraid. They might be violence might be enacted upon them, and they might be arrested. They might be ostracized just for expressing their viewpoint. And I think even people on the left, this is not moving in a good direction.
Yeah. I'm thinking of how this is leading towards the eventual realization of Cheonryuk, the kind of society that the Cheonryuk Constitution envisions. And I think that by degrading the university institution, which is what this student council is doing and what the at the Duke University is also doing, by degrading the whole integrity of the university system, I think they're encouraging more decentralization of education in the long run, where people can be educated through the internet.
Correct.
You
Yes.
don't have to be, don't have to gather all your students into one place with all their hormones, and with all their drugs and everything. That in itself is a rather unhealthy situation, I think, where they are away from their parents, sometimes for the first time in their lives, and their co-ed dorms and their co-ed showers and co-ed toilets, rather to leave them at home or close to home, or leave them at home, and where they can receive a university education through online programs, but with the supervision of their parents, loving supervision of their parents, true supervision of their parents. I think that the left is, by degrading the university institutions, is actually helping us go towards that kind of a goal.
I think so. The King has been really pointing in bringing this whole university system is now, it's an introduction into Satanism.
Yes.
It's an introduction into debt slavery.
Yes.
It's everything that you really don't want your child to go through fresh out of the home.
Yes.
And it is a radicalization of innocent satanic culture.
Yes, and indoctrination, and brainwashing institutions.
Brainwashing at a huge expense.
Yes, at huge expense, where you are paying to be brainwashed. Yes. All right, let's take another break, and we'll be back in a minute or so with more news from a Cheonryuk perspective.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Let them be defeated. Every child has a dream to belong and be loved. Boys become kings,
Welcome back to the King's Report for May 10th, 2017. It's a Wednesday morning, rather cool morning. We're still going through some cool temperatures this week. We'll be reaching more normal temperatures next week. And I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for Moon Hyung-jin, the second king of Cheongguk, and I'm here with Greg Noll, who is a small business owner and entrepreneur. And I want to, this segment, to go to France, go to this article in worldtribune.com. Who is Emmanuel Macron? France's new leader called useful idiot on militant Islam. French President Emmanuel Macron is a globalist and an open promoter of multiculturalism who does not consider Islam a national threat, a French journalist and author said. During the Cold War with the Soviet Union, they were called useful idiots, Yves Mamou wrote for Gatestone Institute on May 7th. These people are not members of the Communist Party, but they worked for, spoke in favor of, and supported the ideas of Lenin and Stalin. In the 21st century, communism is finally dead, but Islamism has grown and is replacing it as a global threat. Emmanuel Macron, useful infidel, is not a supporter of terrorism or Islam, Mamou wrote. It is worse. He does not even see the threat. In the wake of the gruesome attacks of November 13, 2015 in Paris, Macron said that French society must assume a share of the responsibility in the soil in which jihadism thrives. Macron neared the end of accusing the French of being racists and Islamophobes when he said, we have a share of responsibility, he warned, because this totalitarianism feeds on the mistrust that we have allowed to settle in society. And if tomorrow we do not take care, it will divide them even more. Consequently, Macron said, society must change and be more open. More open to what? To Islam, of course, Mamou wrote. Mamou noted that on April 6th, during the presidential campaign, Professor Barbara Lefebvre, who has authored books on Islamism, revealed to the audience of the French 2 television program the presence of Macron's campaign team of Mohamed Saou. It was Saou, apparently, a departmental manager of Macron's political movement, who promoted on Twitter the classic Islamist statement, "I am not Charlie," referring to the magazine, I think, that published caricatures of Muhammad and was consequently attacked. Sensing a political scandal, Mamou dismissed Saou, but on April 14th, invited onto Boran FM, a Muslim radio station, Macron was caught saying on a hot mic, believing himself off the air, Saud did a couple of things a little bit radical, but anyway, Muhammad is a good guy, a very good guy. Very good, presumably because Mohamed Saou was working to ally Muslim voters to Macron. Mamou wrote, adding that Saou is not an isolated case. On April 28th, Mohamed Louisi, author of the book Why I Quit Muslim Brotherhood, released a detailed article on Facebook that accused Macron of being a hostage of the Islamist vote. Mamou said, republished by Drew's Christian anti-Islamist website, Louisi's article gave names and dates explaining how Macron's political movement has largely been infiltrated by Muslim Brotherhood militants. It will be interesting to see how many of them will be candidates in Macron's movement in the next parliamentary elections. Mamou continued on April 24th, the Union of Islamic Organizations of France, generally known as the French representative of the Muslim Brotherhood, publicly called on Muslims to vote against the xenophobic, anti-Semitic, and racist ideas of the National Front, and we call to massively vote for Mr. Macron. Macron has in fact denied that France is a country with a specific culture, a specific history, and a specific literature or art, Mamou wrote. On February 22nd, visiting the French expatriates in London, Macron said, French culture does not exist. There is a culture in France, and it is diverse. In other words, on French territory, French culture and French traditions have no prominence or importance over imported migrant cultures. The same day in London, he repeated the offense, French art? I never met it. The king has emphasized very much the importance of culture in maintaining sovereignty, that every country needs to have a culture, But now the man who day before yesterday, or what was it, 3 days ago, last Sunday, was elected president of France. It says here that he is still the president-elect, but he will become a president. He says, French art, I never met it. He acceptance speech outside the Louvre, but apparently he's never been inside that museum filled with French art. And it says that there is no French culture, that French culture and traditions have no prominence or importance over imported migrant cultures. Wow. Cannot take much hope for France over the coming years based on what this new president is saying about culture, because culture is important. Even as countries as similar as United States and Canada still have different cultures. Even Britain and the United States they have different cultures, even though they speak the same language and have the United States came from Britain and have many of the same legal and so forth traditions, and much of the culture of the United States comes from Britain, but still the United States is very different from Britain culturally. So to say that all cultures are the same and that there is no such thing as French cultures and that we are just diverse, this is denying French sovereignty and denying even the existence of a country called France. And it's a very sad thing to see that this is happening to such a great country. What do you think about culture?
Seems like Father celebrated different cultures. In many of his world tours, he always promoted the local culture, costumes coming out, and traditions, and it was always kind of an interesting paradox with Father that although he celebrated this unique regional cultural differences, there was also a sense that we are all together as one family. So I think in the coming kingdom, we're going to see hopefully a reemergence and honoring of historical cultures, but at the same time, seeing how that we're all connected as God's children. And I think the United States is a growth level example of that, where we all live as individual states and have state cultural traditions. Alabama, for example, is very different than New Jersey, in their cultural outlook and background. But we all get along. We all do commerce together. We can communicate with one another. So I think in the coming kingdom, cultural differences will be celebrated, and at the same time, we can all work together.
It's true what Father liked about cultures. In fact, I remember in the blessing ceremony that was held in the United Nations headquarters building, everyone dressed up in their traditional costume from their country of origin. And it was a very colorful event, and this was very celebrated. And Father himself came out dressed in the costume of a Korean king. Okay. And then he came out dressed in the costume of a Korean king, which upset the UN staff to no end. And I think they still are smarting from that.
Well, Father always wanted people to sing from their native lands and cultural songs and dance and all of that. It was an important part of celebrations.
But at the same time, Father was connecting all of that to the development of a Cheongguk culture, the culture of heart, to develop a culture of heart. So the culture is an important part of sovereignty, and so as Cheongguk develop its sovereignty, it's important that we have a Cheongguk culture. But this does not deny or reject traditional cultures. Rather, it elevates them. It grows. It allows them to grow so that they are all connected to the Christ and to God. Because there's some aspects of culture that are also Cain type. I don't want to say Cain type. That are satanic is the word that I'm looking for. I'm sorry, I used the wrong word there. That are satanic, and certainly culture in, especially I'm thinking of Islamic countries. Many aspects of their culture is satanic. The religion is the origin of Islam is fundamentally very satanic. And we see in the writings that, as we see from the exposés done by David Woods on his research into the Quranic sources and other Islamic sources, and really exposing even to people who believe Islam the evil that is inherent in that religion. So the culture that comes from that religion needs to be vetted, I would say, and the other cultures as well. The king has talked about the shortcomings of Buddhism and how that eventually leads to self-worship and Satanism, and other cultures as well in the past. So there's a mixture in every culture of God has some influence or some input into those cultures, and also Satan has had a lot of input into those cultures. But I think what Father did was he had given with the beautiful part, even in the Middle East culture, even in the midst of all that satanic background, Father saw godly things in there, and he had give and take with those godly things, and he picked those up and connected those to himself and to God. And so I think that was the beauty of that. And as we develop a Choniguk culture, I think that is what we'll have to do.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point. We recognize the beauty of the culture, but then connect it to the lineage of Christ culture. Right. Through the, and then through a natural evolution, the best is celebrated, and the satanic elements can be just walked away. And I think that's probably the greatest concern, is that France has now gone toward phase 2 of the 3 phases of Islam. Yeah,
of jihadism.
Of jihadism. Yeah, and I think no longer are Muslims considered a persecuted minority, but now they're becoming more and more of a majority. And certainly from a voting bloc perspective, I'm sure that this president got 100% of the Muslim vote. And so that's where when politics enter, then often at the detriment to the country, because politicians will basically say and do whatever they need to do to get a vote. And so you have an entire voting bloc. And I think it's true that more and more Muslim candidates are going to start rising in France, and then you'll start to see the introduction of Sharia law on a local level, in local municipalities, and then going further and further. I mean, even London now has a Muslim mayor, right? And we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, this article talks about members of the Muslim Brotherhood, or at least the French version of the Muslim Brotherhood, getting into public life and perhaps running for election, perhaps in the next parliamentary elections. It would be interesting to see how many of these Muslim Brotherhood people will be candidates in Macron's movement in the next parliamentary elections, it says. So Macron will actually be campaigning, I guess, members of the Muslim Brotherhood, or at least the French version of that organization, to be elected into parliament, into other public positions in France.
And one day France will wake up and they'll be under Sharia law.
If they wake up at all.
Yeah.
If they wake up at all. I know that many Frenchmen and women are awake today. In fact, some are following the 3-generation kingships and are awake and are fighting for sovereignty of France. But it's a tough fight. But again, please fight the good fight and keep the faith, and God will reward. God will recognize that fight, as we read today in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 7 and 8. So let's take another break, and we'll be back in a minute with more news from a Choniguk perspective.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy to the best in compact concealed carry. Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today. Carr Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 11 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today. Carr Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today. Carr Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Carr Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology, it's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Carr Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle, famous by Hollywood, the history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun, to the best in compact concealed carry. Carr Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Carr Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit carr.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, May 10th, 2017. We're in the 8th year of Chungi, 4th month and 15th day. And we're on this article that intrigued me in the beginning, perhaps not for the reasons that the author intended, but this is the one that says that more than 40% of Americans won't date a person who has this financial problem. That is, people who have low credit scores. And I'm not trying to date someone, all right? But I am intrigued by the fact that apparently people can get a hold of other people's credit scores. Because I thought that was confidential information, that unless you signed it away, so I'm going to the article right now with the eye to figuring out how do people find out what the credit score is. Anyway, the article says, this is in marketwatch.com, some people inquire about a potential mate's age or how many previous partners they've had. Others are more interested in another number. Some 42% of adults say knowing someone's credit score would affect their willingness to date that person, according to a survey released on Wednesday of 1,000 adults by personal finance website Bankrate.com. That's up from nearly 40% last year. Women are nearly 3 times as likely to consider credit score a major influence on a potential partner compared to men, 20% versus 7%. Younger daters are not as concerned about these 3 digits. 45% of older millennials, defined as those aged 27 to 36, said that knowing someone's credit score would only have a minor impact on their desire to date. But showing an interest in these 3 digits, people are probably being smarter rather than shallow, says Jeffrey Hall, Associate Professor of Communications at the University of Kansas. Finance, education, and job prospects all factor into the value of a potential mate. He says, assuming that people can actually interpret a credit score meaningfully, it makes sense that they would think a credit score is useful in evaluating mate value. So I guess the article is not saying that people are actually getting hold of people's credit scores, but rather they would consider this if they knew it. I think that's the point of the article.
So it's a little deceptive there.
A little bit deceptive. I was here and I went into WikiHow, how to check someone's credit scores. How do you find out? You know, if you meet someone in a bar or meet someone in church or meet someone on a hiking trail and you're thinking about dating them, how do you find out what their credit score is? And it says method 1, requesting a credit for someone else. 1, obtain written permission. Yeah, I thought that was kind of, individuals and businesses must obtain written permission from the person whose credit score they are seeking.
That might put a damper on the initial contact of the relationship. Sign this dotted line so I can do a credit check on you.
Want to go to the movies tonight? Well, here, sign here.
Well, for $14.95, you can get a report. It may not be a 3-digit credit report, but you can get a whole list of things regarding that person. It's almost like having your private investigator working for you.
Yeah,
well, background.
But I don't know how much. Maybe I'll have to try that sometime.
You can do it.
I don't know how much actually. Apparently, TransUnion gives out. Landlords use TransUnion Smart Move. Employers can purchase a TransUnion pre-employment evaluation report through a third-party hiring solutions provider. But I think, though, even in that case, I'm thinking that the person has to give written permission.
Yeah, I think if you're going to be in a potential employee, you're more likely ready to sign that credit check line. Whereas a date, it would be much more difficult. Do I really want to enter into this relationship?
Yeah. So, but people, I guess, are seeing this kind of an external thing as more important rather than a person's ability or a person's willingness to sacrifice for the family or willingness, commitment to marriage. I think is probably the most important thing that I would think that people would want to look for in a potential partner.
But being a small business owner, people can BS their way through any resume and through any first date. Somebody can, people are really good at lying, basically. Yeah. And so I think what people are looking for is transparency.
Yes.
So I see why people want to do this, because it's really hard to tell on a piece of paper or through initial conversation the character of a person. But actually the stewardship is reflected in the types of jobs they've held and the credit they're able to maintain and honor. Those are actually very important elements to a good marriage partner. So I can see the rationale.
But as the King has pointed out often, millennials are graduating from college with a lot of debt, tens of thousands, maybe $100,000 in debt. So it's probably a good question, let's get married. Yeah, but how much student debt do you have?
Right, exactly. Oh, it's a huge concern. Even in my own family, it takes up many waking hours is paying off this debt, if not for yourself, for your spouse. So it is a huge issue.
But if you're going to have a lifelong relationship, and of course, I did not face that situation when I got married. Fortunately, I did not have a student debt, so I can't really speak to this too much. My children, some of my children have student debt, others do not. But I know it is a consideration and how to handle that situation. But I guess different people probably handle it differently.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, would you want to consider somebody multiple bankruptcies in their background? Would you consider this to be a potential partner if they have some kind of issue with the law? I mean, all these things sometimes don't come out until later on. Sometimes even after marriage, they come out. And actually, another trend is people are hiring private investigators to find out information about potential partners too.
Yeah, especially if there are a lot of assets involved. I can
Right.
see, that if not the people involved, at least the parents would probably want to hire. That's been probably going on for centuries,
Right.
but private investigators to check out the potential son-in-law or daughter-in-law, especially the son-in-law, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest indicators is what kind of family the person's coming from, and what kind of integrity and closeness of relationship that the potential spouse has with their own parents and their extended network. I think there's a lot of things that go into play.
But I don't think that these economic things should be the primary consideration when looking at a potential marriage partner. Obviously, it is of course an important reality, but I would think that it would be viewed as one of several potential obstacles to be overcome by the two working together. Of course, it is a better idea. Of course, is to develop a good credit score by not going into student debt, not going into debt too much. Actually, if you have no debt, it's actually bad for your credit score. Did you know that?
That's right.
If you have no credit card and no debt,
Yeah.
It's bad for your credit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's good advice to a young person is to have a credit card, but always make payments on time, and then you build up a good credit score.
Yeah.
So when someone does just check your, it's a good credit score.
Yes.
So you can take out a loan and become a debt slave.
Yes, become a debt slave.
It's funny times we live in.
Yeah, and that's part of the system. That's part of
It's
the
part of the system,
thing
yeah.
that if you don't go into debt, they say, oh, we can't trust you because you've never been tested, so we're going to give you a bad score. And so they encourage and even almost force you to go into debt in order to live in the society. So it's one of the aspects of the society that that needs to be reformed. That's more of the swamp, I guess. That's more of the swamp. The swamp is a lot bigger than we can imagine. All right, let's take another break, and we'll be back with more news from a Chandragupta perspective as we go towards the 8 o'clock hour.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name.
Welcome back to the King's Report for May 10th, 2017, Wednesday, a rather cool Wednesday morning as we go through a week of cooler than normal temperatures. We look forward, though, to the warmer temperatures of next week. It's going to get cooler, though. You're going to need your sweater this weekend in the northeast Pennsylvania area, at least. And I'm here, I'm Tim Elder, sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Moon Hyung-jin, and I'm here with Greg Knoll, who is an entrepreneur and a small business owner and farmer. Oh, you're a farmer, right?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
I wear that with honor.
Great. Let's talk about Chicago. Chicago, unfortunately, has logged its 200th homicide this year. Reading now out of the Chicago Tribune, the woman pleaded with police. Could they bring her the jacket of the man lying dead on the street so she could see if it was her brother? A white sheet covered the body along Garfield Boulevard and Washington Park, and Chicago police cars blocked whatever view might have given her some clues. Soon her phone rang. "It's him," she screamed. Through sobs, the woman cried out that her family had been searching for him all day. "This has to stop. This expletive has to stop," said another woman standing not far away as rain fell. The man whose name has not yet been released was Chicago's 200th homicide this year, according to data kept by the Tribune. The city reached the grim milestone just 4 days later than last year, which was the most in decades. The man in his mid-20s was in the 5400 block of South Indiana Avenue around 7:45 p.m. Monday when several people approached and shots were fired, police said. He was hit several times and died on the scene. While the number of homicides this year are on the same pace as last year, the number of people shot and wounded is down by more than 100, despite a violent weekend that saw 10 people shot at a memorial in the Brighton Park neighborhood Sunday. As of Monday, at least 1,114 people have been shot in Chicago this year, compared with 1,239 this time last year. Tribune data, the Washington Park neighborhood on the south side has logged at least 4 homicides this year. Last year, there were a total of 12 homicides, according to Tribune data. At the scene on Monday night's homicide, a young man screamed when a white work van arrived to pick up the body. Officers moved their cars, revealing the man's body on the sidewalk. 2 workers placed the body in the van and drove off while officers began taking down red and yellow crime scene tape that zigzagged the crime scene. Family and friends remained huddled together on Garfield Boulevard as more people arrived. A family member there declined to comment. The shooting was one of 3 that happened within a 2-hour period Monday on the south side. No arrests have been made in any of the shootings. Wow, that's really sad for people living in Chicago, especially, of course, this does not, I don't think it affects all neighborhoods of Chicago. It's the neighborhoods where, the inner city neighborhoods, I guess, more effective than others. And that's so terrible because, that this kind of thing has to just keep on happening, and the Democratic Party leaders who are in charge of those areas refuse to allow people to defend themselves.
Yeah, it's just the bad guys have access to firearms, and good citizens have no right to protect themselves or protect their loved ones.
I'm trying to get into another article here about how people are moving away from Chicago. Here we go. This is on InfoWars. Thousands flee Chicago for safer areas of the country as America's 3rd largest city becomes a gang-infested wasteland.
That was the question I had, is how much of this is gang-related?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a connection between illegals and gangs like the, what is it, the M13s, gang warfare?
So InfoWars says, did you know that the number of murders increased by almost 60% in the city of Chicago last year? The Tribune was saying that last year was a particularly violent year. They didn't actually put a number on it, but InfoWars is putting a number on it, on how violent last year was. And this year is basically the same pace as that.
Yeah.
It was 60% increase, almost 60% increase. And as you will see this year, gang violence in the Windy City has risen to a new level of viciousness. A staggering 9.5 million people live in the Chicago metropolitan area, and it was once known primarily for great pizza, bitter cold, and some of the best sports fans on the entire planet. But now the number one thing that comes to mind for many when they think about the city of Chicago is gang violence.
And something that's probably not reported is the muggings and other related crimes. We hear about the killings, but you don't hear about all the other more so-called minor offenses. I have a good friend about 4 months ago that was walking back from McCormick Place, a big convention center, and he was picked up in a van, kidnapped by a group of 4 or 5 people, thrown into a van, and he was just walking along the side of the street. They stopped. They all got out. They threw him in the van. They drove him to a warehouse district, and they basically robbed him. And then they just kicked him and punched him and left him on the side of the road in the warehouse area, and he had to find his way back with no money, with no identity, nothing. And it was a pretty horrifying experience, as you can imagine. This guy's from California, peace-loving guy.
Wow, yeah.
All in his life was, altered.
In Pennsylvania, the law would allow that person to defend himself with a gun.
Yeah.
Because Pennsylvania law is very specific that if you have imminent and reasonable threat of serious harm, serious injury or harm, or death, or kidnapping, or rape, then you can use a gun to defend yourself, and that's a justifiable defense in that case. So,
and these thugs know that nobody's armed.
Yeah, yeah. So, in this InfoWars article, I went down to the part where they talk about people moving away, and sure enough, it's the wealthy people moving away. In particular, wealthy people are leaving the city in droves. It has been reported that 3,000 millionaires left the city of Chicago in 2015 alone.
Wow, 3,000?
3,000 millionaires.
3,000. Wow, that is huge.
A million isn't what it used to be.
But still, it's
you and I don't have it.
But that's the wealthy class right there, yeah.
Certainly, the ridiculously high taxes are one factor why so many wealthy people are leaving. But of course, gang violence is also a major reason for the mass exodus. If violence in our major cities is starting to spiral out of control while the economy is still relatively stable, what are things going to look like when a complete economic meltdown happens? That's a good point.
Good point.
Yeah.
But most of the violence, I would say, happens within a mile radius in South Chicago. I don't know what the statistics are, but I would imagine it's probably 80% of the murders in Chicago are in this one geographic area.
We'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
It is only a matter of time before widespread rioting, looting, and civil unrest becomes commonplace in major cities all over the country in the case of when there's economic collapse. In anticipation of what is coming, large numbers of Americans have already been relocating to less populated portions of the country, such as
Pennsylvania. Father was smart. He guided the brothers to this kind of remote area of Pennsylvania.
But we don't want too many people to move here, do we? One of the problems in this area is that people are moving here from New York and bringing their New York problems here,
That's right.
bringing their New Jersey problems here, and they vote the way they voted in New York and New Jersey, and that's not good, not good. And the good news is that there are lots of areas to pick from. According to Survival Dan, about half of the U.S. population lives in just 146 counties. We're obviously not 146. This is a very rural area, and I really think as I'm driving back and forth on a daily basis, really I'm driving past trees. I'm not driving past buildings. I'm driving past trees and fields and meadows. Of course, some buildings, but it's largely green in this area. It's not gray this time of year. In the wintertime, it's gray, but this time of year, it's very green. It's a very beautiful green. The view from the Cheonrygung Palace every morning is just spectacular,
Stunning.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
Just
stunning.
spectacular, especially this time of year. Every time of year, actually. But right now, as the king was saying, it's like, you have these the green hills that you see and the sort of the fluffy, it's almost like green clouds, in the sky as we're looking down into the Delaware Valley from the mountaintop of Cheonrygung Palace. It's so wonderful.
Beautiful.
Please don't come. Please don't move here. Don't move here. We like it as it is. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's cold. It's cold every day. Don't come. Of course, it can be quite difficult to find a good job in an area that is not heavily populated. That is also true. Yes, that's another point. There are no jobs here. Don't come. And there are a lot of expenses involved in relocating to a totally different part of that country. Yes, 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 yes. Don't come, please. And there is certainly a lot to consider when picking out a new place to live. And so you would want to do a lot of research before making such a move. But my wife and I did step out in faith and made a decision to relocate to a new area nearly 6 years ago. One of the best decisions that we have ever made. But don't anybody else make that decision, all right? Stay in Chicago.
That's true when people move to Pike County to support the Three Kingships.
Yes, yes. If you're going to come here and support the Kingships, yes, that's
You are
that's
welcome.
Fine. Yes. This was an article by Michael Snyder about how he and his wife moved to a place like that 6 years ago. But yes, it is certainly more and more of a problem. But obviously the people in Chicago need to be able to defend themselves. You know, and the person that you described also needed to be able to defend himself. I guess he was in that environment where he was from Chicago and he was from California and in Chicago.
Yeah, just on a
Bad
business
combination.
trip. Yeah.
Bad combination. Just on a business
So
trip.
If we had this national law that they're thinking about passing, then he could
National
have carried his
concealed carry.
he could have carried his firearm with him
Yeah.
and protected himself.
Yeah.
And probably would never be approached by thugs because the thugs are thinking, "Gosh, everybody's armed around here."
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I think in this area, it's said that 70% of the homes have guns, and about half of the population is a member of the NRA here in Northeast Pennsylvania. So yeah, we have a crime rate that is about half of the national average, or less than half of the national average. Yeah. There are problems brought in by people who are moving here from New Jersey and New York and don't support the Kingships, but in general, it's still a very wonderful area. Yes.
I have another friend who lives in a high crime area in a New York City, and it's the same thing. The hassle of moving and everything it just keeps him where he is in this crime-infested neighborhood with a 9-year-old child that cannot go outside, only in his backyard, watched closely. And what kind of life is that?
Right, yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
if he
it's
just
not,
made the decision, okay, it's not worth it just to leave, or if they had gun laws there that were respecting law-abiding citizens, then he wouldn't have that problem.
Let's skip this break and go right up to 8 o'clock. We only have a few minutes left. That is an interesting thing, that people are sort of stuck in a rut, aren't they? You know, and for many people, coming here is certainly we've seen many families moving here to the Northeast Pennsylvania area in order to serve the Second King and work with the Second King and serve the three-generation kingships. And it's tough. And some people come and are able to settle down and they eventually wind up moving back. And I think it's similar to what happened in the development of the American West, where people would move out to the West, but not everyone was able to settle there. And some people actually lost their lives there. They starved to death or they froze to death because they could not support themselves and they could not develop the infrastructure to survive there, whether physically or financially. So not everyone is able to make it, but it takes careful planning. You need I think there are three things that you need in order to move here. You need a car, a house, or at least a place to stay that you hopefully arrange before you come, and you need a job. You need a job or some kind of a financial foundation. If you're independently rich, that's fine. You know, you've got it made. If you're coming here with $1 million, then yeah, you can buy a house and you don't need a job and you can buy a car and you're set. But most people coming here, though, need to arrange for those three things at a minimum in order to come here and find a stable foundation for themselves.
Or come out here, somebody comes out here, finds the job, and then the rest of the family comes.
Yeah.
As a result of that job.
And again, that's what often happened in the American West. The husband would go out first and then, send for the wife and children later.
Right.
Or they would all, sometimes they would all just come out, pack up the covered wagon and move out west. And we've had that happen too. We've had that happen too. People, I think the important thing though is to not get stuck in your rut. Like you said, in the person living in the city, 9-year-old child living in a dangerous neighborhood and cannot allow the child to go outside and play. On Sundays, it's really nice to see our children playing in the property of the church, of the sanctuary church, and running around and chasing each other, and playing sort of games that they make up. And I was talking to a person in the Newfoundland village some time ago, saying, "Oh, we drive past your church, and it's so wonderful to see all the children. You seem to have a lot of great youth programs." And I'm thinking, youth programs? We just have, kids just run wild, that's all.
Running out of control.
Running out of control.
And in Newfoundland, they've never seen such a spectrum of color.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. For a while, we were known as Asian church.
The Asian church, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's still true.
Yes,
but
somewhat,
it's
yeah.
true that most of our children do have black hair and some brownish skin. Yeah, that's quite true. But they're coming, even the Asians, though, coming from different Asian countries. Not all from Korea and Japan, but from the Philippines and Cambodia and Vietnam and other places. So it's a really wonderful situation here. But don't come, all right? There are no jobs, please. It's cold every day. But we do welcome people who move here to serve the
I think
kingship.
One of the key characters you have to have when you come here is a pioneering spirit.
Yes.
Just like you're saying about the Great West. You have to have faith in God, and you just have to put, in one sense, your faith on the line, but also you can practically prepare as well.
Yes, and freedom and responsibility, isn't it? Because coming out here means that you need to be responsible. Of course, we help people as much as we can.
Yeah, but it's a self-reliant culture.
Yes, yes.
That Chunga culture is one built on self-reliance.
Yes. So don't arrive at the airport and call me up and say, "I'm here."
Where's my ride?
That has happened. That has
Many
happened,
times.
yes.
Aren't you gonna put me up in your house? Aren't you? It's kind of a socialistic system that's kind of penetrated the unification movement over the
Yes,
years.
yes.
I'm expecting you to take care of me.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
one family, right?
Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning on this Wednesday. It's a rather cool Wednesday morning, and we hope that you have a good day in God's grace, and that you will receive many blessings from God. And if you're receiving trials, those are also blessings. Please, as Mrs. Kong has said, we need to be able to go through tribulation with joy, and to overcome tribulation with faith in God. Thank you very much, and Godspeed, God bless, and may His kingdom come.